We're at day 2 now of the Global Petroleum Show in Calgary. Joining us is Daniel Kempling, and you're with Irwin Safety and Industrial Services. Tell me a little bit about the topic that you just presented to people here.
We did a talk today on something called Efficiency Through Safety. We think it's a revolutionary program where we're actually using data unavailable to most facility operators before, and we're collating this data, presenting it to the client, and using it in such a way that they can tune up their manpower loading and efficiency tracking figures. And we do that by using the essentially the personnel that we've already deployed in place and that they're paying for. People like air quality technicians, safety watches, and in some cases spark watches.
So so these people have already been hired to look for safety infractions, make sure everything's being done that way. What is it that you're looking at now that would help a company realize a little bit more efficiency in its work?
Well, there's a lot of times in the process of a turnaround, which you got to admit is a very hectic environment. The maintenance manager people don't necessarily have all the personnel to closely monitor what they're actually getting for the return on investment. When they pay the various sub-trades, especially those working in confined space, they have a very difficult time getting hard figures on how many man hours are actually being realized in productive, efficient work. And so what we're doing is we're using the people that are already in place, right, to track those figures, because they have to monitor these people anyway. So we've just basically added a layer to their duty because they are trained observers, and so we're using them as sort of personnel that can gather raw material. We collate it into a spreadsheet, and then we can say this is actually what you're paying for.
So, I mean, these people are obviously reporting to work every day, the ones that you would be checking to see their efficiency. Is this monitoring sort of like a human punch clock, a human time clock, where the people there are just watching every movement that they make, making sure that they're not taking breaks? Is it really strict like that, or is it a bit of a looser thing?
It's not so much like a time clock, because there's actually three aspects. It's not just idle time, which is what we would call where the workers aren't working when we think everything's set up for them, but also two other aspects, what we call wait time, which is perhaps where as a safety contractor, we're not in place for some reason, and we'd be also providing that. And there'd also be what we call downtime, where we'd come to the facility operator, where we could also say, everybody's ready to go, where's the permit? Where's the procured materials that we needed to have here? So it's not just the subcontractors, it's also the safety contractors, and sometimes it's very surprising to the facility owners as how much is on them, right?
Well, it's just the nature of the job sometimes, I imagine, or that's how it's been treated.
You got it, right.
So one of the things I thought interesting, you did a bit of a real world example during your session. The amounts of savings are staggering, or can be staggering.
Yeah, the savings are, sometimes people will focus on just the raw hours dedicated to clearing the space, doing the investigation. Maybe it's an hour or two off. So much of it is hidden. As the statistics showed, 5 or 6 times of these lost time incidents are hidden costs, things like loss of production. And if you're a facilities operator, that downtime is the stuff that can really bite you in the ass, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
You made reference to it's called normalization of deviance. Explain that to us. I think you sort of have touched on it a bit, but explain it a bit clearer.
I borrowed the term from the National Energy Board's draft on safety culture, and essentially it's where you get a certain amount of man hours that are loaded into something, and that figure gets grandfathered in succeeding budgets, just because it was an estimate at one time in history, and yet it may or may not be accurate time in the future. So this is what I'm calling a normalization of deviance. It's clear in an anecdotal way that there's inefficiencies, but there's no hard data. And so what we're doing is being able to provide the people that are responsible for oversight to say, look, this is the hard data. This is actually how long it takes. And before that wasn't. And so that normalization of deviance is going, well, we've always done it that way, so let's just keep doing it that way, whether or not it is actually fiscally prudent or not.
And that sort of plays into another point that you made, and that is that businesses often tolerate losses as well, and this would be an area where they would do that.
Yeah, absolutely, they tolerate these losses, and at some point, it's got to trickle downhill somewhere, and ultimately ends up with the consumer, right? It has to go downhill. It's just the nature of the business.
Daniel, thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.